Hi,
Hello.
Harish and Aashish. Thank you so much for joining us today. It's a great pleasure and honor to speak with you today. Maybe, Asian Paints does not need introduction. Asian Paints was one of our first customers as well, so thank you for that. But we have a global audience here, so would like to maybe get a quick introduction for both of you and tell us what your role is, and then we'll kick it from there. So Harish, I'll start with you.
Yeah, hi, I'm Harish Lade. I'm the head of supply chain at Asian Paints. Been part of the organization for now over 25 years and seen quite some digital initiatives and transformations. In 2019, I moved on to look at supply chain at Asian Paints, and it's been a great journey to kind of, the same organization, really learn new things through the pandemic. So it's been an interesting journey at Asian Paints.
Thank you, Harish.
Hi Igor, thanks for inviting us here. I've also spent a lot of time in Asian Paints, played various roles, started my career with IT, looked at manufacturing, supply chain, and now I head the entire IT team for Asian Paints. Again, similar challenges like Harish worked on a lot of digital transformations, looked at new business models that we are emerging on, and trying to digitize them as far as possible. So that's been my focus for the last 2 or 3 years.
That's great. Thank you. Thank you. Asian Paint has been recognized globally as one of the most innovative companies. You guys do different things well ahead of the rest of the market. I know that you've been experiencing significant growth as well, so congratulations on that. I know it takes a lot of work, but tell us a little bit about how that growth impacted your supply chain planning, complexity of your supply chains, and what are the challenges that you have to solve along the way.
So our growth has been coming on two aspects, if you see, right? So one is on the main paint business itself. I think we have been growing at phenomenal rates in the last 3 years. In spite of COVID, we grew even in that phase and even later on. And Harish can also talk more about that. The other aspect of growth is, as an organization, we are transforming really from a paints only company or a coatings company to a decor company. Where we are largely adding a lot of new product categories into the consumer space, and at the same time offering that as a service. So moving away over 80 years of legacy from just paint to moving to different product categories and services. Both these elements have a very different challenge from a supply chain perspective. They are smaller businesses for us as we speak, but our real plan is to grow them much greater. The supply chain challenges when you introduce a lot of product categories, and I'm talking about lights, bathroom fittings, kitchen, rugs, fabric. So when you add these product categories, you are really working for far greater stakeholders. You're not making everything yourself, which is what we were doing in paints. So it's a lot about working with stakeholders, getting products to the consumer in his house when he desires it. So that's the real challenge in a multi-category in a supply chain where we are trying to really beautify the home of the consumer. So I would say different challenges on the growth aspect on this element, and I think we are really gearing up for it. It's been about 3 to 4 years, I would say. It's still infancy, but that's the real growth driver for us, apart from the growth engine that the paint gives us.
So I think apart from the decor strategy, which is kind of getting into the next level in paint and the allied product portfolio, also we've kind of really innovated very much. In fact, if I really reflect on in the last 5 years, we've actually launched close to maybe around 30 to 40 products in the paint category every year consistently. So despite being market leaders and having the entire range of products, we continuously innovate even in the paint and some of the adjacencies. So now we're saying that, okay, what goes on the wall, we also want to protect what goes inside the wall. So we kind of launched a whole lot of construction chemicals, waterproofing, those kind of products as well. Because at the end of the day, I think our philosophy is to kind of, really, solve the consumer problem. And towards that, a lot of products and categories across the value chain. Because if you see in India, the growth is now coming a lot from the bottom of the pyramid as a category. So you really need to, continuously from the supply chain lens, support this introduction of new products. And also we start getting into a lot of different channels. So earlier our model was, direct to dealer. And now we also have very large and growing projects business. So there you kind of deliver directly to the construction side. You start dealing with builders and the contractor segments and the government segments. So overall, I think that has added to a lot of segments in the supply chain, and obviously the added complexity along with it.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Well, it's amazing. I mean, that in effect, you're running now actually multiple supply chains inside of Asian Paints that have to be responsive to a different type of a needs from your customers. Typically, right, when you're entering new businesses, right, there are of course the organizational challenges, right, that you need to set up and planning organizations, but also a lot of just data challenges, right? And so how did you solve for that, right? How do you think about different data that needs to power these processes? And maybe we start with Harish and Aashish, you can add.
So I think our data, as a practice has been quite, I recollect it's been there for almost, even before some of these terms like master data management came into vogue. We always had a very strong data practice. And in fact, way back when we implemented the, earlier planning tools, we kind of really invested a lot into creating a kind of a master data hub. And that kind of is really agnostic of what all planning systems or execution systems you end up using. It's also kind of agnostic of the ERP which we use. So from the user perspective, we kind of model the entire business elements, because at the end of the day, your master data is nothing but a reflection of your business elements, in terms of, your, the materials, the flows, the vendors, and all the kind of data associated with how your business is digitally represented. So we already had that practice. And I think as we added more businesses, we added new dimensions and models to it. And early on also, we kind of realized that the master data management is also a kind of a process and a governance issue. So we actually created a master data governance cell. And in fact, that actually sits within the IT function. So the IT team takes the ownership of getting all the federated inputs from all the user functions, runs automation, validation, cleansing, and then federates it into all the consuming systems, right? So in a way, that practice has been now honed over the last kind of a decade or so. And I think that came handy because whenever any new business comes in, we kind of look at that model, enhance whatever new attributes we want to look at, identify who are the owners who will kind of enrich that data on an ongoing basis, put the governance and validation workflow. So I think that has been the approach for the master data governance part of it. And when we really look at the transaction data, I think that really feeds off from the various transaction systems which are there, right? So we have a very good enterprise integration practice which will kind of ensure the syncs and all of that, right? So that's how we've kind of approached the data kind of a problem, right? Yeah.
So if I may just add, you're right, Igor. I think data really, makes or breaks IT projects, right? And we realized that, very early. And as Harish was saying, really built a data management platform. But as we are growing in different channel and products, the problem gets more complex, right? So across product categories, especially in the decor space, we have to look at data around different attributes, right? Around fashionable attributes, about color, about how it's looking in a particular ethnic look or in a particular situation. So those elements keep getting added on, and obviously as I was speaking earlier, how to look at it from a planning perspective also will change, right? So trying to ensure that you have the data which is really appropriate for planning is critical. The attributes and the elements may be slightly different than what's required in just the ERP part of it, and hence you need to prepare for both, right? And it's not necessary that the ERP will have all the data. You need to have some, and we really build that very early on.
Yes. No, that's amazing. And a lot of times, right, I think, especially in planning, a lot of the data is kind of locked into people's brains, right? We call it the tribal knowledge. How did you maybe give some examples of how would you deal with that, given As you said, your organization is getting quite large, entering to the new businesses and so forth.
So that's been a challenge always, running knowledge management projects in the conventional sense, where you're trying to get, as you said, the tribal knowledge, back to a lot of people in the organization so that they can learn faster, get more productive faster, has always been a challenge. And it's not very, easy to do that. But now with the latest technologies coming in of, generative AI, the ability to get the data organized and real advanced algorithms being able to give more human-like responses to the end individuals. I think that's an area that we are clearly working on. We are running a lot of pilots. We're trying to see how this organizational information or tribal knowledge really is accessible to many more, because that's the really IP of the organization that really comes about. Yes, applications will have, but it's also there in spreadsheets, in Word documents, in people's mind, right? So how do you get that and move it? So we are running some initiatives around that. I would say it's still early stages, but I think it's got a lot of potential. And if you marry that with planning data, I think the combination can be very great.
That's great. Maybe just to build on top of that, what do you see are, and maybe Harish for you, what do you see are maybe the interesting use cases in planning of the Gen AI concepts that Aashish just talked about? Do you see anything that you're saying, well, if I had my wish, right, I'd like my planners to have access to this type of a let's call them knowledge assistants that are digital in nature.
So I think as we kind of see the supply chain environment, I think it's no longer that the black swan events happen infrequently. We keep seeing different disruptions happening at a quite a frequent pace, right? So now those events obviously are all cannot be kind of modeled in a system, right? So you really need to free the bandwidth of your planners and executors to really focus on those areas. But today, if you really see where they spend the time on, is really interacting with the planning engines, really checking the quality of the plan, or really looking at the execution. And some of them are, I would say, very repetitive decisions. Now, if we can really imagine that if such a system kind of comes in, and maybe, at least the wish is that, with some of the systems can be set up to, track what are the frequent decisions, what a good planner typically would take an action when, let's say, there's a tactical breakdown. If all those decisions are understood by, let's say, any of these futuristic systems, then a whole lot of maybe 70% of your decisions can kind of go into, an autonomous mode. So yeah, there are a certain set of decisions which you anyway model mathematically, and there's an optimizer, etc. And maybe that's a starting point, but between that, and you can't keep running an optimizer every day for every decision, but you still, between those two runs, keep taking a lot of decisions, answering queries from the customer or from the field force out there. So if all of that goes into some kind of a very learning kind of an autonomous mode, and that frees up the bandwidth of the planners and the logistics team to really focus on looking at some of the higher order kind of decision making, right? So I think that's the way in which we really want to go. The second challenge which we kind of see is that really expanding and getting into newer areas. So, and obviously having the right talent has always been the challenge, right? So a good planner, when he looks at an exception situation, makes the right decisions. And if that person leaves, and for the next person to come in, I think in that period, I'm sure there'll be so many cases where you're losing value because maybe, he or she was not equipped to make the right decision. Maybe they didn't know the context, they didn't know the market context, all of that, right? So somewhere really we have to get into this zone where we, get some of these tribal knowledge digitized, codified. And I think the technology is there today. I think with all the emergence of graph and large language models where you can take in unstructured data to kind of really make sense out of it and organize it. I think the technological challenge is kind of, solved. We just need to get into this journey and see how, some of the research over here can, help us go into the next level of planning systems and decision-making kind of systems, right? So at least that's the ask which we want to kind of really get into. The other area is to also start correlating and answering questions more effectively on the what O9 calls the post game analysis, because that's where a lot of management bandwidth goes, right? When you review things, then the team is really collating everything from the history, from the actuals, what went, and then stitching that picture. I think some of that can be made at a click of a button, right? So this is not the classical analytics, but really getting into a very very structured and a correlated analytics of sorts. So I think some of these are the areas where if we really get and I think it should be possible in the next maybe a year's time to get some of this going actually. So that's the way I really look forward to how your roadmaps would kind of converge going forward.
Yeah, I just wanted to add, so the element which Harish talked about of post game analysis, I think we've been using the O9 tool and the framework really well to react to situations, right? But and that's a day to day. But you take a breather at the end of the month and see what was wrong, and that itself takes a lot of time. So trying to see how best you can come up with that so that you don't have that problem again. I think it's a great thought.
No, I think you guys are some very, very innovative and continue to innovate very fast. Maybe for the ending question for both of you, last few years, right? The topic of sustainability is on top of minds for many supply chain executives and CIOs. So maybe tell us what you are doing in Asian Paints on that front. So maybe start with Harish.
Yeah, I think this is a topic across the board and across the countries, right? So I think from our perspective, we've been onto the sustainability journey for from a multiple lens, largely because paint as such is an industry which is in a kind of a red category from the environment perspective. So some of those factors have always been kind of part and parcel of our factory design, in terms of our factories being zero liquid discharge, and really water is one of the areas where we've got initiatives going on where every year we actually recharge 3 times the water which we consume in our paint production. Renewable has also been the focus in terms of so today our renewable number stands at 67% renewable. So all our manufacturing operations, when we sum total it, 67% comes from the renewable sources. So that has been the core part of the environment aspects, but the larger footprint is what is also what we are getting into, and a big area which we have embarked on is to really start measuring the carbon footprint of our products. We have done the life cycle analysis of our key products, done the scope 1, scope 2 and scope 3 calculations, and given the nature of our industry, a lot of it is kind of in the scope 3 zone. So at least at this juncture, the idea is to now really start looking at a mapping of our extended supply chain, and this kind of goes again hand in hand with the the planning and the mid to long term decision making and risk management kind of a decision making, because we really need to model the entire network of not only your tier 1 but a end tier kind of suppliers, because for us I would say quite some material, almost 50% by volume, would be coming in from the naturally mined resources. So really need to go that level of upstream and do that analysis, and I'm sure it's a very integrated view and look at sustainability with supply chain and the whole network model, so that we kind of have that woven into our mid to long term planning, as to how do we really decide where we source from, what vendors get priority. So that's the journey which we kind of embarked on, and that's something which I think no organization can kind of let go of, because at the end of the day, our if you really see, our motto has been to bring joy to the lives of people. Has been so joy through decor and beauty, but also now through sustainability.
Yeah, so I think as Harish was explaining, sustainability, a lot of initiatives we've been running for many years. I think what is also important is how you involve employees in the whole initiative, right? And communicating and providing information and data is something that we have been focusing on. So at various levels, dashboards to enable understanding of the concept, and as well as providing more information, right? And that's where everybody in whatever role they play start getting involved towards ESG. While environment was a focus in the early stages towards and governance, I think the S part of ESG is something that we have also been focusing a lot in the last 3-4 years, and created a vision, and we really put out elements that we really want to take in that space, and providing a framework so that the communication and the data information is available to employees has been the focus from an IT side.
It's amazing. Well, Harish and Aashish, thank you so much for the insightful session. I know that our audience is going to love it.
Thanks. Thank you.
Thanks, Igor, for having us. Thank you.